Los Angeles is ablaze. Hollywood is ignited. Heck, it wasn't even that long ago San Diego was in fuego. But either way, within a scant few hours, the scouring of Pacific Palisades was already poised to overtake the 2003 conflagration by a mile. Who knew the state that took over a month to count the presidential votes might be caught flat-footed by a fire? In the plus column, though, Governor Gavin Newsom plays a mean fiddle. Folks, there's posing atop corpses, as with the aftermath of every mass shooting of the past 20 years. And then there's this.
I hate to even ask this question, but the president-elect chose to attack you, blame you for this.
One can't even respond to it. I mean, people are literally fleeing. People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools. Families completely torn asunder. Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it. I have a lot of thoughts, and I know what I want to say. I won't. I stood next to a president of the United States of America today, and I was proud to be with Joe Biden.
Gosh, if we could wring out those crocodile tears, we could have this thing contain Toot Sweet, because we're certainly not going to be able to do it with water, since the fire hydrants evidently have none.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter in this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out.
See? Local people will figure it all out. Families can fight their own fires. Maybe Hobo Jim can fentanyl shuffle off to the beach to bail out your bungalow one bucket of seawater at a time. But one thing we know for a mortal certainty, it won't be ciphered out by the mayor of LA, who long after the earliest embers that engulfed all of Pacific Palisades in an inferno was just a bit busy flying to Africa.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Can you back up? Appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? Madam Mayor, let me ask you just again, have you anything to say to the citizens today as you return?
No. They're gonna come.
Ma'am, hold on 1 second.
Madam Mayor, just a few words for the citizens today as you return to deal with the catastrophe.
Can you take this down?
The purpose? To show solidarity with the first female president of Ghana. That's right, Callie Cucks. While your houses were still smoldering, Mayor Muff decided to virtue signal about slatch politics. Now, in her defense, given Ghana's political history, the new president has maybe a month before being kidnapped and killed in a communist coup. So sometimes you gotta get that autograph in while the body's above room temperature. Hey, maybe after her head's been located, you can sell the autograph on eBay and buy a new H in the Hollywood sign. It'd be the first H sold in Hollywood that didn't end in Philip Seymour Hoffman's death. And while the title to this video is indeed a reference to the Public Enemy song of the same name, I might have just as well used 911 as a joke, as throughout the disaster, for all their copious public works expenditures and taxing LA citizens through the nose, up the brain, and out through the top of the skull, public safety systems as basic as running water for fire hydrants collapsed like Nancy Pelosi without a walker almost immediately, meaning entire city streets, sweeping suburbs, and finally the iconic Hollywood Hills were outright immolated, despite having plenty of time to have prevented precisely that result. If only firefighters had access to H2O. I'd say we've witnessed the destruction of iconic locations, but the sobering fact is the vast plurality of LA landmarks were already bulldozed to build up Big Lots. It's easily the most depressing fact about contemporary Los Angeles. Whenever I occasion to watch a little 40s film noir, which is frequently, I simply stagger at the stunning locations featured in each and every film, and yet as I research said location online, it's a near certainty said building was replaced with a theme park or a hobo camp at some indeterminate point in the 1990s. If you want culture, eat some cottage cheese. If you want rent that's higher than Snoop Dogg and a standard of living lower than Biden's nuts, run, don't walk to Los Angeles. Not to save time, but because otherwise you'll be shot. And as we all subliminally applauded the hellscape that was Hollywood, the pseudo-conciliatory, but actually asshats inevitably chimed in with their white bread apologia. Oh, you oughtn't to delight in their dismay. It's time for red staters celebrating the destruction to look in the mirror. Even the film industry isn't inherently the problem. There's nothing inherently wrong with the filmic medium. Actually, I'd say it's more of a problem with the medium well. And I'll just be direct as a laser missile here, folks. And you asshats can feel free to dislike the video at whim. The only people who need to take a long look in the mirror right now are Californians themselves. Not the mayor, not the governor, not the damn dog catcher. These people were elected, re-elected, and even saved from recall as recently as 2021 to do exactly this. When Gavin Newsom was plucked from the slavering maw of unemployment in 2021, he already had over 100 active lawsuits against the Trump administration, including to uphold the environmental regulations that led to the lack of water to fight this fire. It was easier for you lead paint pounding Uber imbeciles to entertain the fiction that Larry Elder was the black face of white supremacy than to confront the consequences of your own clannish idiocy. And before anyone claps back with, what about the conservative Californians? First off, try looking up the numbers. Pacific Palisades is in or around 80% died in the dog shit Democrats. And as for the remaining 20%, what about them? The founding fathers, who many of you purport to enshrine and eagerly invoke when arguing for constitutional protections for your firearms and First Amendment rights, both of which are openly curtailed in Cominternfornia, by the way, tended to ignore one of the most consistently espoused values of SAME, the concept of voting with your feet. The founders were no utopians, people. They were a rabble of realists, all too aware that no one state would be a one-size-fits-all endeavor. And as such, every founder from Jefferson in his earliest screeds against Great Britain to even later political figures such as Frederick Douglass in his address on composite nationality all extolled the need for the citizenry to move to a more agreeable political climb, leaving the corrupt to collapse upon themselves. If you concede the corruption of the California regime and you have yet to relocate, you, my friend, are in dereliction of your civic duty as defined by the founders, and no complaint you deign to voicen will be or should be perceived as valid. It's a bitter bitch to swallow, but medicine often is. This is the net result of appalling urban planning projects, internecine authoritarianism, and uninterrupted one-party rule. This was utterly preventable. California repeatedly elected not to prevent it. No one had to consult a Ouija board or commune with any long-dead ancestors to predict this eventuality. This was so appallingly obvious, Trump predicted it in a half dozen campaign appearances, and even on the Rogan podcast, a podcast, I would remind you, whose own host has been warning of this issue if environmental regulations are not brought down to some semblance of sanity.
They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why don't you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north. Water, more water than they could ever use. The head of Austria tells me, we have trees that are much more flammable than what you have in California. We never have forest fires because they maintain their forests. And you have all that water that could be used. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up. And they don't want to clean up their forests because they have environmental problems in cleaning it up. It should be the opposite, because you're going to lose your forest. You'll lose it. But it's costing our country hundreds of billions of dollars because of incompetence in California. So the people, I'm speaking now for the people of California, they don't want to see this happen. They're getting destroyed. One thing I'm going to do for California, vote for me, California. I'm going to give you safety. I'm going to give you a great border. And I'm going to give you more water than almost anybody has.
California's response was to sue Trump even harder. Over the course of his first term, the state of California sued Donald Trump on average once every 12 days. By 2021, the year California decided to save Newsom's job and double down on Democratic unilateralism, the bill for those lawsuits already accumulated to over $41 million. You voted for more of it. So sit back, take a deep brimstone-bereathed breath, and bask in the fruits of your fecklessness. This is the net result of electing a governor more concerned with his quaff than his constituents, a mayor enamored with abortion on account of her administration already is one, and a diversity hire lesbian fire chief who's less LGBTQ than LGBBQ. I'm Razor Fist. Godspeed. Now, wait a minute. If Hollywood's full of Jews and Hollywood's on fire, wouldn't that make this a Holocaust?